Hello everybody, good evening, good afternoon, world citizens, boys and girls, chaps, ladies, gentlemen, and all that gens and gender nonsense. Whoever happens to be watching, you may remember me as the man with too many hobbies. I'm back after a year away. I've been away for an entire year because, namely, I don't make these things myself. My friend makes them, I appear in them. We've got a lot of catching up to do. It's been 1 year since the last time. Last time it was summer. It's summer again this year, 2021. And so for this first episode, I will cover all the changes which I have made in this house since last year, all the improvements. As you remember, I live in a 160-year-old house, and I've been steadily putting it back to the way it was 160 years ago. I am now sitting at a table, a 1920s table, which I managed to pick up. It was actually just lying around here. It was on my very same street. So I'm very lucky to get this table. This is now my new dining room. It's all made to look like about 1925 or 1935. Everything in here is from that time. Very lucky to get a table like this. It's in the Tudor style, which was popular at the turn of the century and right up to the 1950s. It's very chunky, sort of English Middle-aged look. Looked like it come out of a castle or something. These are all replicas, of course, but it was popular at the turn of the century and pre-war. And it's very unusual to find one of these in Japan because at this time, Japanese didn't sit at tables like this. They sat on the floor, on the tatami, to have dinner. So very few of these lying about, but I was very lucky enough to get one. Also behind me, another lucky find, is a sideboard made of oak. Now, would you believe it? Oak in a country where they don't have oak, which means that this would have been imported from England, or it would have been, the wood would have been imported and it would have been made here. But this must be about 90 years old. This weighs a ton. Even with two men, it was a huge job getting it in here. But all solid as oak. Very lucky to find this piece. Now, this entire room has been stripped and put back to the way it was. This time last year, there was another wall over the top of this. This is the original soot from the Maid era. So this was the kitchen, a sooty kitchen. It does have a chimney, but there's enough soot in the kitchen to make it this black. Uncovering the walls, I also uncovered that window up there. Now have a look at that window up there. And if you look, you can see my maid. See the maid? Isn't she lovely? Now the reason for that window is so that the maid, that is the maid's room in this, so the maid can always look down into the kitchen and keep an eye on the family and guests and see what's going on, and whenever necessary she would come down, clear the table, lay the table, pour drinks, and always keeping an eye on things in here. Also, I managed to find these very unusual Shoji doors. I've only just finished restoring these. When I got them, they were a complete wreck. Everything broken, all the windows broken, all these wooden bits were all broken. What's unusual about these ones is that I've never seen it like this before, this diamond shape. Shoji are always horizontal and vertical. So this is a Western influence coming in. So this is probably Taisho era Shoji. And so I spent a couple of weeks restoring those. Now they fit perfectly. They don't actually fit perfectly, but I'm going to fill these gaps up later. It doesn't really matter in summer. You just need a partition in summer. So there's my Taisho era Shoji. Shoji are actually quite warm in winter. There's better insulation than glass. The insulation is about as good as glass plus a thick curtain. So cheap and effective. It's just paper. So So also, so improving to get the original 1920s look in here, I've got authentic lights from even earlier than that. This is probably 1890s lamp that works. I love all this ornate these twirly bits. And also I managed to get this. This is another light built much later. This is probably the 1970s, but at least it's built in the Tudor style. This chunky, thick look with lots of hammered out iron pieces on it. This was a complete wreck as well. Half these things were missing. Two of them are still missing. I still have to make those because they're missing completely. So that just gives it the authentic look of a I'm saying about 1935, this kitchen. Very hard to get all these pieces together, especially when you're living in Japan. If you're living in Tokyo, you pay a fortune for these things, just a fortune. Living here in the country, fortunately, they just fall into your lap sometimes. The painting, still life. It's just a beer mug and an apple. Not too exciting. Probably done by an amateur, but still, it's authentic for the time. This sort of thing was popular at the time, and especially the frame. I mean, just look at that. Just very thick, ornate carving. You'd never get a frame like that today. Let me explain this door a bit more. Now this window to the maid's room. It's interesting. There's the original 160-year-old glass on there. So if you actually pan a little bit with the camera, move it up and down, you can see all the wobbliness on the glass, and it actually makes the expression on her face change. And this just slides open like that. So I should say, two customers come in, cook, can you get the tea ready, please? Something like that. And then she would rush down and pick up the tea and take it out to the guests. And the most interesting thing, one of the most interesting things about this window is not only the wobbly glass, but the fact that it has a lock on the inside of the window, even though this is inside the house. So what's that all about? Well, it could be two things. Either they put that there because during a windy day this rocks if it makes noise, or what is also likely, at this time, you'd have to lock women up, especially your maid at night time. They'd have to lock themselves up to protect themselves from possible intrusions by other members of the staff. So they would lock their window. This is probably to prevent some young man from climbing up here on a ladder at night time. So that's the sort of age it was. Right, and we go on to the next improvement. Stove. I put this stove in here. This is from the old country. I carried it all the way here in the boot of my car. This stove came all the way from the old country. It's imported from there. And it was an original New Zealand stove. They only made these in New Zealand. And it's just like a coal range. Well, it is a coal range, but a very small one. And they were originally designed for boats and caravans. This particular one is probably 1940s. It was a complete wreck when I got it. Burnt out, flames coming out the back, completely rusted through. So I pulled it apart and I rebuilt it. I rebuilt all the rusty parts using, believe it or not, I used a sink. An old stainless steel sink, which I cut up with a cutter and made a copy of the original parts. So all the rusty parts now are gone, and it works perfectly. Okay, so you make your fire in there, oven in there, thermometer there, which I added. This is not even the original. Somebody modified this in the 1940s and stuck this in. This is not part of the original stove. But with that in there, that would stick out to there. It would bang into your plates, your trays. So I put on a thinner one. Anyway, the real thing to look at is at the back. You've got to look at the back. You see, we're looking at the back of the stove now, and as you can see, it is stainless steel. That's what I made. So the whole back of it, the bottom of it, the inside parts have been remade in stainless steel taken from a sink. So restoration costs, $0. $0, 0 yen. Time, about a week. Took me about a week to do this. A bit of trial and error, but I got there in the end. So rebuilt with the stainless steel back. So now the kitchen, if you just like to do a whole, can you do a whole pan of the kitchen? The kitchen now is starting to look the way I wanted it to look. The original. So much better than it was. The problem with these old houses is you have to completely go over and redo all the mistakes that the previous owners made. And they made some horrible mistakes. And one of the worst rooms was this kitchen. It was just bad, poor taste. And now it does look original. Even the small items, I'm trying to make it look authentic, so I've got period correct furniture, slightly later perhaps. This is an interesting chair, especially that. That says National Defense Underground. So this would have been in, an air raid shelter. This chair, from an air raid shelter. But was it never used? The original there. Usually when they're that old, they start to come like this. And I fixed that. So authentic furniture. Authentic 1930s lampshade, which looks like a flower petal. Little things like this are hard to find. Right, well, that just about covers the kitchen. Oh, these doors. Have a look at these doors. I replaced these doors with these beautiful how's that for fancy? Look at that. Now those are all cut by hand, and they all just slot together perfectly. No glue, no nails. Wonderful craftsmanship. So now none of the doors are original. I've replaced everything. Okay, now on to the next renovation. This particular space is new. Well, not really new, it's just that what was here, I just removed what was here. What was here? It had a built-in closet, which should never have been there in the first place. It came out to about here, and came out to about there, so you could not sit here and look through there. So the house is much more transparent now. Better light coming in, and it's just got that look of Japanese houses where everything's transparent. You can see through the walls. The walls glow. So it feels much more open. But this was a very important part. This was for the maid, this particular thing. As I showed you before, the maid's room is on top of the kitchen. It's on top of where we are now. So that's the maid's room up there. And she would be continually looking through the windows, or sitting by the window, and if a customer came in, or if the family needed something, she would come down these stairs, see those are the maid stairs, and walk along here and open. So this is just for the maid, this bit. She would come along here and she would open this. She would open that, and she would bow here and say, "Irashaimase," and bring in the tea from here to the important customers, like that. Before, you couldn't do this. You couldn't walk along here. You couldn't walk through here. So now it's much more open, the way it originally was. With the maid. Yeah, okay, yeah. Let's go meet the maid. She's in there. up the stairs. So, here we are in the maid's room. The smallest but most important room in the house. She would be running everything. So I've set it up to make it look like the way I imagined it would have looked. This is popular when I have open home days. This is popular with women. Nobody goes to this extent in homes in Japan, historic homes.
Very hard.
It's very hard to find a house with a maid's room. It's usually been turned into something else about 50 years ago. So she is dressed in kimono with trousers. Those, well, I wouldn't even call them trousers. They're actually called mompe. These things are mompe. But they're so you can walk about more easily while wearing a kimono, and especially in snow. That's just a wig, but it is a real human hair, and had it done by a professional wig maker. That is not really a doll at all. It's a mannequin for learning how to dress kimonos. It's a kimono mannequin doll. Now let's take a look at this window, the maid's window. You could not look through this last year. The only thing you could see was the dirty top of a ceiling covered in dust, and the window itself was filthy. It was just absolutely filthy. And it was so annoying to have a window that it has been nailed shut that you couldn't look through, which you should be able to look through. And so when I finally got all the ceiling off, I removed the ceiling and finally got down to this window and pulled it out, it just felt so good. I finally got the window out, and very, very carefully I pulled it apart and cleaned it and put it back again. And one of the first things I did was rush up these stairs and come up here and look through the window. It's the first time I've been able to look through it and see down the way it should have been. So this is the way she would have seen it, with the original wobbly glass. 2 cups of tea, okay, be down in a minute. Like that. So this sums up the restoration work for the kitchen and the maid's room that I've been doing over the last year. Hold on to something. If you slip, that's the end.
No, just half a minute of nothing.
What about this? That's new. Is it another video?
Yeah, that's for another day.